In this video, I'm going to show you my easy way of covering a cake board in fondant. Hi, it's Karolyn. I'm back with another video, and if this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. And if you want to see the different tips and tricks and ways that I bake and decorate cakes, then hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you can get notified when I release a new video. So like I said, in this video, I'm going to show you how the easy way that I cover a cake board with marshmallow fondant. I posted a video a couple weeks ago on how I cover a cake board with foil, and this is just another option for you. A couple things. It's raining right now and there's a thunderstorm, so I apologize for lighting, and the trash guys are picking up the trash and it's just a big mess right now. So I'm sorry if there's a lot of background noise. And also, I need to plan a little better when I make these videos, because in the beginning, I start telling you everything that you're gonna need. And of course, as I start working, I'm like, oh crap, I need the turntable. Oh crap, I need this. So I will list everything that I use below so you can see a whole list of everything you're gonna need to do this. So if you wanna see how I cover this cake board in fondant, then just keep on watching. Okay, so to do this, you're gonna need a little bit of Crisco or some kind of shortening with a paintbrush, a container of cornstarch to roll out your fondant, a rolling pin, obviously. I have some marshmallow fondant here. I can link my video below on how I make marshmallow fondant. And I have this light blue, which I actually mixed a little bit of Wilton corn flour with some royal blue to get this light blue color. So this is the board that I want to cover. And what you want to do before you roll the strip out, the strip of fondant out, you want to measure how wide the strip has to be. So this is about 1.25 inches, so I'm going to make sure I roll it out a little wider than that, probably 1.5 inches. If you really want to get technical, you can measure the circumference of the board, which is 32 inches. So you want to make sure that your fondant is at least 32 inches long by 1.5 inches wide. Just wash my hands, they are clean. I pop this in the microwave for about 10 seconds so it can be soft and pliable. Roll it into a log before I roll it out the whole way. Always sprinkle a little cornstarch so it doesn't stick to the countertop. Flatten the log before you roll it out. And I want to make sure it's at least 1.5 inches wide. I can take my ruler here and measure. This is plenty wide. And just roll it out. Just take a pizza cutter and just cut an edge off on both ends. And just cut a straight edge, because this edge is going to go up against the cake. So just one side of it you want to get straight. Now I'm going to take my turntable. I always have a piece of non-skid pad on the turntable so the cake doesn't slide around as I'm working with it. And grab my cake. This cake is fresh out of the refrigerator, so the icing is solid, so I'm not going to mess it up as I work with this. So, there are two options. I said originally in the beginning that you need Crisco with a paintbrush, but you can also do this with piping gel. If you do it with piping gel, it's going to stick to the board better, but it's not as forgiving and you can't move it around as good. So, for these purposes, I'm going to do Crisco, because when you use a little shortening, you can move the fondant around the board much easier. But if you want to, you can always use piping gel. You just have to work with it faster. So I'm going to paint the whole board from the edge all the way up to the cake with the Crisco. You just want a thin layer. It doesn't have to be too thick. Just enough to make the fondant stick. Okay, now there's always a front and a back to the cake. Now obviously this cake isn't finished. This is going to be the front. I'm putting a plaque here and I marked it with a bigger dot here so I know that this is the front. So I'm going to go around to the back And this is where I'm gonna start. So I'm gonna get my X-Acto knife handy so I can easily cut the fondant. So I'm gonna start by putting the flat edge that I cut up against the cake and placing the fondant down on the cake board. So now what I'm doing, I'm turning the cake and I'm curving the fondant around the cake board so it meets the cake. So you want to make sure that you're not pressing too hard on the fondant because you don't want to put fingerprints in the fondant. So I'm lightly lifting this up so the edge touches the cake and then pressing it down with my thumb to adhere it to the shortening that's on the board. So lift up, let it fall gently, make sure that it's up against the cake. And also you want to try to make sure that you're not getting any air bubbles underneath here. So you need to let it gently fall down to the board. You don't want to stretch it too hard. You don't want to cause tears or rips in it. So it's just a funky little process of lightly lifting it, making sure it's touching the edge of the cake. Okay, so now when you get to the back, it's going to overlap a little bit. I'm just going to lightly press down to make sure it's adhered to the cake board. Now, I'm going to take my X-Acto knife, and where it meets here, it overlaps. So I want to make sure it's overlapping both parts. And then I'm going to cut a line through both of them to create a seam. Remove the top piece, then lift this bottom piece off and remove that piece underneath, and then you have a perfect seam. You can also take a fondant smoother and lightly press the fondant down to smooth it out. Or you can take a piece of fondant, roll it up into a ball and flatten it out, and then dip it in a little cornstarch and then rub it on top of the fondant to smooth it out as well. Fondant on fondant smooths so well. And there go the frickin' neighbor's dogs. Really? Anyway, I'm gonna have a wet paper towel here so I could just keep wiping the X-Acto knife off. So now I want to trim the edges here, and I want to just hold this up like vertical against the edge and just gently cut the excess fondant off the edge. As the fondant starts to stick to the blade, I'll just re-wipe it on the wet paper towel and continue the whole way around. Now I'll just take my finger and smooth the edge that I cut so it's all pretty. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put this back in the refrigerator and let this fondant set up for a little bit. So when you put it in the fridge, you wanna lift it up and just hold it from the bottom. Don't stick your thumbs or fingers on top because you're gonna make fingerprints in the fondant. So just putting this back in the refrigerator and then we will continue. And now I wanna put the ribbon on the cake, around the cake board. So in order to do this, I usually remove the non-skid pad so the cake board is flush onto the, flush the right word? Flush onto the turntable. Yes, I think that's right. Anyway. So I want to make sure that this foil is flat against the side of the cake board. So what I usually do, I just take this non-toxic glue stick and I just press the side against the cake board to make sure that it's really flat, like all the foil underneath is flat against the cake. This is if you cover the cake in foil yourself. If you bought a cake board, you may not have to do this. I do have a video on how I cover a cake board in foil. I can link that as well. I have this blue ribbon, so I'm going to take the ribbon, wrap it around the board. To see how long it has to be. Oh my gosh. The cake gods are working in my favor because this is exactly just long enough. So. And then I'm going to put glue on the outside of the cake board and then on the ribbon and then put it on the side of the cake. And then starting in the back where all the seams are, I'll put the ribbon down, holding it with my thumb with one hand and then wrapping it around the board with my other. So I'm going to take my thumb and press it against the board and then keep repeating the process. Stretch it out, press it against the board, and then run my finger down. And where it's going to overlap onto the ribbon here, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue behind there so the ribbon can adhere to itself. Just take my finger and press it against the cake board, making sure the ribbon is adhered the whole way around. And there is your pretty fondant covered cake board. So here you go. Here is your pretty blue cake board covered in fondant. I'm going to set this down so I don't drop it. So like I said in the video, you're going to want to make sure that you are very careful with your fingers and don't make any marks in the fondant as you are working with it. This has been sitting in the refrigerator overnight, so it is hard and can hold its shape now. I mean, I'm still not really going to touch it, but if I happen to touch it, there really won't be an issue. This is just an easier way to do it so you're not covering the whole cake board and you're not wasting all that fondant, and I just feel like it's a lot easier just to do it this way. And if you wanted to, you can cover the whole cake board in fondant and just let it sit overnight, let the fondant stiffen, and then stack your cake on top of that. So I really can't think of anything else to say about this. If you have any questions, this piece of hair, seriously. If you have any questions, leave them below. I try to answer questions once a day, usually in the morning before I start to work. So leave them below. I will answer them as soon as I can. And please like this video if you liked it. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and you want to see more videos like this. And you can follow me on social media. I am on Facebook and Instagram, and I have my website. I will link all of that below. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I will see you